Well, that clock's slow because it says 9:03.
9:03 on my
Oh, does it?
Yeah.
iPad.
Oh, it does on mine too. Okay. Whenever you're ready, Renee.
Is the stream ready?
Okay. All right, welcome this morning to our Board of County Commissioners meeting. We already have a prayer lined up. The sheriff is going to do a prayer reading or thought. And then afterwards, I will lead us in a pledge. So Sheriff, this is National Police Week, is that correct? And he's got a reading or thought for us.
I do. Thank you for the opportunity, Commissioners. As you stated, this month of May is the National Law Enforcement Memorial Month. It is the time that we set aside as a nation to observe the services and the sacrifices of those who serve in law enforcement. And just as freedom is not free, creating and maintaining a civilized society and safe communities comes at a cost. That cost, of course, is the cost of those who pay the ultimate sacrifice in their line of duty. And this year alone, duty-related deaths are up 30% from last year. And as we know, last year there were 3 law enforcement officers in Utah that were killed in the line of duty. I have a reading that I would like to read to this group, and it's from an individual who worked a career at the Maricopa County Sheriff's Office in Arizona. His name was Deputy Harry Coate. It's called "A Part of America Died." Somebody killed a policeman today, and part of America died. A piece of our country he swore to protect will be buried with him by his side. The suspect who shot him will stand up in court, with counsel demanding his rights, while a young widowed mother must work for her children and spend many long, lonely nights. The beat that he walked was a battlefield too, just as he had gone off to war. Though the flag of our nation won't fly at half-staff, to his name they will add a gold star. Yes, somebody killed a policeman today, in your town or in mine, while we slept in the comfort behind locked doors. A cop put his life on the line. Now a spirit walks the beat in the dark city street, and he stands at each new rookie's feet. He answered the call of himself, he gave all, and a part of America died. I would just hope that we would remember those who serve and take an opportunity to thank them for their service sometime this week or this month. Thank you.
Thank you, Sheriff. All right, for the Pledge of Allegiance, if you'll please stand for one nation under God.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. Thank you for that as we begin under this day and this great opportunity that we have to be here. On our consent agenda, we've got a number under a consent agenda. It is 32. It's almost breaking a record, isn't it? 32 items under consent, and there are 2 that I'd like to pull off of consent and putting on regular, and that would be number 5 and number 10. If we could, I propose that we table number 10 for now, so we can have a little further discussion and then possibly bring it back if that would be acceptable. Are there others that are on consent that you'd like to see pulled off?
I had a question on number 12.
For 12, okay. Very good. Okay.
Just way of information maybe on, do we have a total on all of those grants?
City grants?
On the city grants, all the ones that are on consent, just so we can maybe. Okay. I was just thinking this way of announcement, we could let people know what that is.
It's gonna be pretty close to about $250,000 to $300,000.
Right.
Okay. Yeah, and that's a good note, that those are going out to cities. A lot of money there for their parks and recreations and so forth. Okay, moving to our regular agenda. We'll assume everything goes on to consent except for what we hold. We've got 5 items on there. And let's hold I'd like to hold number 3, 4, and 5. Are there
I had questions on 2.
2? Okay. Anything else?
Other than striking the work session, do we want to do that now?
Yeah,
or just wait?
let's just do it right now. On consent to strike work session number 2. The presenter couldn't be here, and so that will possibly be at a later date. Okay, and then we'll deal with the closed meetings later on in our meeting. All right, let's go back to number 5. This one consumed about half my day yesterday. Going down through, I know on the agenda there's, that was published, there was a whole bunch of information on there. Some of the things that I was going forward with was not quite understanding the difference between how we're killing parcels and what that meant and what it meant by best human interest. And I was
Or pulled for same reason
Or
as 2014.
pulled for same reason as 2014. And so there wasn't enough information on there, so it started a series of questions that were going on back and forth, and I think we're getting closer to what, and then of course, as always, we'll look at the code to see where we're at, and in working with Jeff and his office, and with Paul and Bert and with Dave, I think we're getting close to where we're at. Unfortunately, it's a little confusing now because we've got all kinds of documents floating around. So if we could have a little bit more clarification at what we're actually going to be looking at and the reason why.
Mr. Chairman, let me, just before Bert
Sure.
gets into explanations, just briefly just explain that
Okay.
this is a process. There is a committee that involves the Recorder's Office, the Civil Division, my office. They've met continuously, and I appreciate you asking, because there are some of these issues that are on here that have kind of floated from year to year, situations out of our control. But please, speak up through this, and we'll give you the best detail we have.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Commissioner Bert Harvey, Utah County Clerk Auditor's Office. I apologize for the multiple documents. Of course, this is, with tax sale, this is typical every year, that it's kind of an ever-evolving process in terms of what's staying on the sale, what's going off the sale, almost up into the last minute. That's why on the agenda there was 2 lists originally submitted, a potential list and a pulled list. In the future, they may either all end up being potentially pulled, or they all end up being pulled. We're again reviewing the code that affects putting this on the agenda to come before the commission to make sure we're doing this process correctly and identifying the correct parcels that you actually do need to give your final approval on. And that's what some of the question was yesterday, is whether or not this was actually an item that the commission needed to approve, or just simply rubber stamp, or were we bothering you unnecessarily? So,
Yeah, because I actually challenged everybody on that question.
yep.
And I said, well, what happens if we don't approve? Does that mean that they all go on the tax sale? And everyone went, wait, hang on a second. Whoa, what's going on? What's happening? And I thought, well, how can it be on the agenda if we can't, either approve or disapprove? That didn't make any sense. So,
And that's a very valid question. And when Paul went and looked back at that, and I don't know if Paul wants to come up and talk about this, but I'll go ahead. I went ahead and pulled the Utah statute that defines this particular action, and it goes back to 59-2-1350. Land irregularly or erroneously assessed not to be sold. And there's 2 parts to that statute. It's very short. Essentially, it basically states the first part is that the county auditor, as part of the tax sale process, can pull any land from the sale that he or she believes has been erroneously assessed, and then basically cause that property not to be sold. That would be, in our essence, the killed parcels, in which we've identified parcels through the research process, through the county recorder's office, and in consultation with the county attorney's office, have determined these parcels either in error or for whatever factors. We're taking the steps to remove them from the tax rolls, and we'll do that through the regular processes, through correction letters and that sort of thing. So because they're on the sale, we have to take an action and make a determination whether or not they should exist, and if they should, whether or not they should continue on the sale. And those killed parcels do not necessarily need to be approval, because we're basically saying, okay, well, we know these ones are in error, we're gonna get rid of them.
Right.
But the
Does
second
that
part,
also include airport hangars, parcels that are still in receivership, and then going down through when we're talking about, the other one on there was bankruptcies,
that
payment schedules that have already been approved by the
Right.
commission.
Right. And in the final version of the list that I submitted, I left many of those parcels on there because I don't know that we're completely sure on those ones. So, I mean, things that have been approved by the commission previously, as I read the second part of the law, to me, it states that we're bringing parcels to you that we feel should be pulled in the best human interest, and basically, hey, these are parcels we want to make you aware of. Now, in the case of bankruptcies, in the case of receiverships, in the case of like airport hangars that are privilege taxed and can't be sold through this process, they are legal parcels that should exist. So they haven't been erroneously assessed, so they don't really fall in the first part of the law. But they're parcels that, through the law, really the tax sale is not the process that they can be rectified, either because of superseding law in the case of receiverships or bankruptcies, or this is just not the process to reclaim those taxes, like in the case of the airport hangars. But they are parcels that exist on the tax sale and have to be pulled. And so therefore, I left them on the list of saying, hey, these ones are parcels that we're pulling for these legal reasons. The ones that do
Do
require,
we have to approve that? That's the question.
I think that's
that can be done. Again, if we don't approve
The
it,
lateness
that's
of
where
the
I get-
hour, yeah. Again, if you don't, effectively right now, I don't think you can approve them or not approve them. I think they are just and it's more of an informational, these are the ones we've pulled, here's why.
Yeah. And for that reason, I would not want it to be on the list.
That's right.
If it's something that we can't do,
Right.
then they should be taken off the list, except for the ones that we can. Of course, according to the statute, which I have in front of me,
Right.
says that we can approve.
Right.
So the other question I have, though, correct me if I'm wrong, but the May tax sale is in essence to sell the parcel of property and pay off all debtors or all liens, which tax is a lien on it, right?
Not exactly.
Just to pay
Well,
us.
Just to pay
I know,
us.
but in essence, if somebody were to have existing liens, depending on where we fall in order, should it not be reclaimed, all those liens would be paid, right?
Not exactly. As far as my understanding, and I would defer to legal counsel on this, but and this is what I tell individuals who both have properties on the sale and are interested in coming to sell the purchase property. The tax sale's purpose is to collect the taxes. Beyond that, whatever extra money is collected, we as a county do not have a process to evaluate claims. We simply, as part of our processes, once the sale's been ratified, everything has been finalized, deeds have been recorded, I take steps to send that, whatever money is over above the taxes, penalty, and interest collected, up to the Utah State Treasurer, to the Unclaimed Property Office, and allow them to, basically anyone who has an existing claim or lien on the property, allow them to make claim on any existing funds through that
Okay,
process.
So to that question, why would we ever pull one at the IRS's request? That seems counterintuitive to our process, because the IRS does not care about our taxes. They're going to get theirs and not a penny more and not worry about it. So why would we forego this process on one of them to do that?
I'm glad you asked that, because that actually goes back to section 7425B. I actually brought the letter with me that I send to the IRS every year, in which the IRS basically has a 120-day protest period after the sale to protest and request that the sale be overturned. In this case, and that's in the case of federal tax liens. In this case, the IRS took a step further on a property and actually put a deed of trust in place that essentially the same type of deed of trust like a mortgage company would put on a property. in which they are now in the process of foreclosing. Now, the IRS, through their attorney in Salt Lake, basically essentially said that, yeah, if it was sold, they would use that 120-day period to protest the sale and take what steps they had to in order to either get the sale overturned or get their funds reclaimed. But essentially, they were making that ahead of time, and in consultation with the attorney's office, we just felt it was in the best interest of the county.
So how do we recover our money then?
When they finish the foreclosure sale, they have to pay it off the taxes.
So basically, this is just a courtesy.
Yes,
Okay.
essentially.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's a courtesy in saving everyone a lot of hassle after the sale, and the fact that we know this protest we filed. So it's easier on everybody involved to allow this to basically come off the sale this year. Now we have communicated to them that this is a one-time event. If the property's selling the sale next year, we will go forward, and then they are welcome to protest after the sale if they feel that's what they need to do. But we essentially saying, okay, this 1 year, we feel it's best for everyone involved to just simply pull it from the sale and allow
But
that process to go
Their
forward.
protest of the sale, if I remember right, based on last year, means they would have to find fault in our notification or something like that. The
That's
reality
correct.
is we have a legal claim. We're legally able to go to May tax sale on this property, and it's a courtesy. So again, why put properties on the tax sale? Because it's going to come, they can still protest, but in essence, we're duly charged with making sure we are collecting taxes for all entities. So why would we ever waive that for the IRS or, without an error or something as a courtesy? I'm failing to see how, waiting 120 days for their protest period and then waiting another year potentially to put this on May tax sale next year benefits the residents of this county and all of the properties we would collect for, or the entities that we collect this property tax for.
Well, and it goes back to that is that it's our job to really, we're not in the business of selling property. We're not a real estate broker. We're not here to be Utah County's firm of property liquidation wholesalers or whatever.
No, we're
Our
here
job-
to
our
make
job is
sure
to-
100% of all those that have
Right.
property tax are collected and paid equitably
Yes,
for everybody.
and
So
we have
by
and
not
we've
doing that,
historically
aren't we playing favorites?
Well, yes and no. I mean, and the problem and the challenge with this process and why this process has so many outs within it is because it allows for individual circumstances and human interest to come into play. And we have historically pulled parcels from the sale that are close or have a reasonable surety to know that the taxes outside the tax sale process will get paid within a reasonable amount of time. That is, we've pulled business parcels in the past through a payment agreement process where they've been doing refinancing processes in order to ensure the taxes get paid and also save the business. And those are usually,
Right, but we
I
don't
know
have that with the IRS. We do not have a payment
The I-
agreement.
we do not have a payment agreement. The IRS, though, has spoken with and maybe I should just turn this over to Paul because he's the one that spoke with we both spoke with the attorney, and they've said that this is in the foreclosure process. So through that process, it'll get sold and our taxes will get
We'll get paid.
Yes.
So this is my understanding, and my understanding is that, maybe for just analogy purposes, we have somebody on the hook with this, and this is the IRS. When it eventually gets sold, or we'll get the money out of it if it happens next year or this year, whatever the case may be. But if we just go ahead and sell it, then we might have some complications with what's going on. I mean, if we sell it, we get the money right away, right? Potentially, if somebody
Potentially.
bids on it. If it doesn't, then we own it. Then we have another
The
situation.
IRS will still foreclose and we'll go
And they'll
through the process.
foreclose, and then we'll have we'll have another process
That's
with
why
it.
I don't know
Well,
why we wouldn't do that.
And of course, the first step in that process, the IRS could protest the sale, come before the commission, make the arguments about that, and the commission could say, no, we think we've done right and ratify the sale. And then the next step, of course, they could go before a judge, and the judge could either vacate the sale, and basically we would then have to refund everything we collected plus interest back to the original bidder. Like unfortunately we experience every year. It seems like that one of these seems to get overturned for whatever reason. So it's kind of like, okay, before we go through all that, where we have had a conversation with the IRS about this property. They are a government agency. They do have that 120-day right. They have expressed their interest in using those rights, but also have informed us where they're at in the process and with assurances that the tax can get paid, we feel it's in the best interest again to
Well, see, and
pull
it's,
this and let the
it's funny to
process go
give
through.
compassion to this, because what I learned yesterday from our auditor in our audit kickoff is the IRS is targeting government entities, in essence, because they're easy money. So again, why would we not protect ourselves, meaning our residents of Utah County and the property, and do things if we've duly noticed this? That's what I don't get. I understand foreclosure, but there's nothing that says during foreclosure, we're gonna get 100% of this. Potentially through foreclosure, somebody will get it when they finally decide to do something about it again. Then we might finally see it in 4 or 5 years.
Mr. Chairman, if I could go ahead and just add a couple comments. Each of these situations is looked at carefully and individually. In the past, and correct me if I'm wrong, Bert, we have sold items that have had IRS liens on them, and that under the stipulation that if they had any concerns during that 120-day period, that they would file. And there have been cases where we've sold those, and we've gone ahead, and after the 120 days, they said, no, just go ahead, and they haven't filed a protest, and so we've moved forward. I haven't been as involved with this particular situation and the one that is before us, but there has been some additional communication with the IRS and looking at the overall situation, and to save time and interest and additional transactions. In this particular case, the recommendation from the tax sale committee was to go ahead and work with the IRS. It seemed like it would save everybody in the long run the most problems, and we would still get the taxes, which ultimately
All we care about.
is what we care about, in doing it in the most efficient manner possible.
I don't see the IRS one on here as, which
It's
one?
the second to last on bottom of page, on that explanation,
on
bottom of
this one?
page 1. And it's the second to last one on that one too, if you flip it over. Highlight it.
If you,
Oh, okay. So my question's on the IRS one. I mean, typical with the tax sale is that if somebody has an interest in there, they'll come to the tax sale and they'll protect their interest by bidding up to whatever their interest is to make sure that they get something out of that, right?
well, actually, no, we don't allow that through the tax sale process. That's considered exclusive bidding. We have an ordinance against that. Anyone that would find in violation of that, I think we would probably look at some sort of, I don't know. I'll let
So you're saying,
Dave- Dave wants to say
you're
something. I'll
saying
let him
that an
say it.
owner couldn't come and bid on it and say up to the tax sale? For,
The owner has an ability to pay it off anytime prior to the tax sale.
right?
But at the tax sale, if there are liens on the property and the tax sale cannot be used as a means of an
Wiping
owner
off the
trying to
liens.
clean
Of
up. other
Cleaning up the
protecting
liens.
or perfecting your,
Trying to get it for
Inter-
under.
But
Okay.
he's still, he meaning the property owner.
yeah, in fact, if a property owner were to bid and pay, we would just consider it a redemption.
We would not
Sale,
transfer any additional title.
Just paying the taxes.
Right.
Let me add, Paul Jones here from the county attorney's office. Commissioner Lee's first questions that he brought up, as far as the airport hangar parcels and the parcels in receivership, I think you're right. Those should not be on your list. I think the whole list under consideration for you should be this last list that
Let's
Bert
pull
Harvey.
parcel's third version, that one.
Well,
uh,
the third version does
No.
include all the killed
Yeah.
parcels. The list that I put on the agenda that has the additional explanations, which was not a public document because of some of the sensitive nature of some of the situations. That would be all the properties in which should be considered in the best human interest or extenuating
So the
circumstances.
only
to be
ones that I
pulled.
have, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 on this page. And then on the backside, there's 1, 2, 3, 4
Yes.
that are maybes.
Yeah, the
So
fours are
yes
maybes.
on
and the-
these,
the-
and you
the-
may pull these. You're
the
looking
six-
for approval to pull them all. Well, pull the 6 for sure, and
Yeah.
maybe the 4 on the back.
Yes, that's correct.
Now,
The
so
6
I don't know if everyone is on the same page with that, knowing what we're actually looking at. The rest of it that's on there, even the one that's the with the IRS is not on this list.
Yes, it is. It's
Is it
on
on
the
this
first
list?
page.
On the
On,
first
on
page.
Oh, it is on this
bottom-
list. Okay, it's
the
on
bottom
it's
one.
on the bottom. Yes.
Sorry, it's because IRS
was
is
my
not the
concern on that one.
owner.
It's Utah Pacific Holdings.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, one of the things too I might point out is we began this whole process upon receipt of a list from the treasurer's office of everything that has delinquent taxes from 5 years ago. When someone comes in and makes payments on a parcel, it always is applied to the most current year. But if 5 years lapse, so in this case, there are still outstanding taxes in 2012, then we go through the process for everything. So by nature, we are looking at a list of everything that has delinquent 2012 taxes on it. And at that point, in the past, and this is my 11th year involved with this, we've had to make a review or a recommendation or something on each one of those parcels. Some of them, like the airport hangars, some of them they're in dispute, like the holdaways with the lake level and things like that. I don't have any legal means or my office to go ahead and address that through the tax sale, but they still appear on that list. And until we legally do something to take them off, we're still under the charge to review everything, in this case, from 2012. So that's how come the list becomes so comprehensive, but narrowly focused on what we can actually sell on tax sale does narrow down.
So again, I just wanted to reiterate that the full list that we had on there before is not for consideration, not all of it. There's just parts of it that are on here for us to approve of,
Right.
and it's for the best interest
Yeah.
of the county, of the public. And so there's only, 10 items. The rest of them will go through a different process.
Yes. Or
Or they're
Yeah.
legally removed.
legally removed anyways.
Right.
See, so the first 5 I have no problem with. The second 5, I still struggle with that IRS one, but I get where you guys are coming from.
Right.
But in principle, I don't know that that's good business, but that's okay. But see, the last 2 on the back 4, right?
Right.
Actually, the last 3 where it talks about potentially whatever that Mr. Thompson has the right to pull. Why would we ever take them off now?
Well,
Why
I mean-
can't you pull them off at the last minute? If we're working on a payment, if we pull them off today, there's nothing that says we don't go to sell,
And
right?
that's why they're just potentially, because
Potentials.
I always like to hold that leverage we have
Sure.
until the last minute. It's an interesting dilemma that we're in because we do have the obligation to accept the taxes. We also, as government, I believe, have an obligation to look at extenuating circumstances and situations. And it's been my experience that as long as we hold that leverage on some of these right up until the tax sale, that a lot of them get satisfied or something comes through. I've had people that just says, I can't. And I've said, well, I'm going to have to sell it. And then the morning of the tax sale would come in
Come with money.
and, oh, a family member has loaned me and that. And so that means someone has stepped in and extended the mercy, if you allow me to use that phrase. And at the same time, we've justified the obligation we have under the law. And so we've used that discretion. But definitely on the potentials, they could still be on the list. We're just informing you that if, depending on how things come out, we may, right at the end, go ahead and pull them. And
And I
so
would
we're
do-
making you aware of
And I
that.
would defer to your judgment on that, but I don't know why we would pull them today.
And you're not.
And we're
We're
not.
not.
You're just allowing,
These are maybes.
Yeah, they're
Backside's
maybes.
just
you're
maybes.
saying the
I
clerk
got a
has
question for you.
authority to do that,
But see, I'd
which
still-
is required.
I have a question
have
for
to
you
do
on
that.
the second page, the first one. This was on last year.
Yes, it was.
And it was, there were supposed to be payment agreements and everything that was taking place. I read down through your explanation of why. And so I'm wondering, since it wasn't on the sale last year, if these situations don't happen, in which you outlined here in this, it will be on the sale this
It
year.
will be on the sale, and the family is aware of that. Now, the one issue is, that's just come to my attention the last couple of weeks, is that part of this is in probate, but I haven't seen any documents to this point.
Okay.
And it will be upon production or proof of that then we'll evaluate. But the family, I actually have been in regular contact. I contacted them 3 months ago and said, hey, guys, you're putting me in a position where we extended a circumstance last year for you to do it, but if it's coming up, we're going to have to do it again. And because of the market and because of some issues in that particular area and how people want green space and that, the family has been unable to get what they wanted But the latest now is they actually do have an offer. It's less than what they were looking for, but it's probably more than we'd get out of tax sale. And once they get this probate portion of it cleared up, then the sale will go through. I've actually seen the sales contract and everything, but it's the probate part of it that I'm waiting for the documentation on.
So one way or the other way, we won't see this one next year.
That is correct. It'll either be sold, and then they
sold
can
or
go ahead and
be
take the
sold.
proceeds
Yeah.
from that sale, or it will be settled in. It is under
It's in
contract.
their best interest to comply because otherwise the tax sale could be much less than what they desire.
Yes, and one of the descendants in the family trust does realize that for the three elderly ladies that were involved in this, one passed away this last year, and the other two, they do realize that it's in their best interest to move forward and do what they can. Once again, I always have a challenge with this because everybody, and there are people out there that go ahead and sacrifice, put off repairing the car, making improvements to their home to pay their taxes. And then there's other people that try to use the system.
That's right.
And so it's hitting that balance and recognizing, because we as government are not in the business of taking people's property from them. And over the years, in the hundreds of homes, we've only had to sell 2 or 3. And we've always been able to come up with something. It's taken a lot of work and effort and encouragement and that, but it's hitting that right balance. But at the end of the day, if we have to sell it, it will be sold.
Okay, so before us is just, and how are we gonna put this into motion? Because I don't know, we have so many documents on there now. What do we say in our motion? that we're
The
considering?
document that is probably the most relevant to that is titled as the, I believe, 2017 polled explanation. And so on that document is listed all the parcels that have been pulled in the best human interest or in the best interest of the public.
Yeah, not human interest. I think it's just
Best
public.
interest.
I mean, according to the
We'll
code,
just say the best interest of
Especially
the
because you got
public.
the IRS listed,
Public
there's no
interest,
such thing
yeah.
as human interest.
Right, sorry.
public interest, yeah, there we go.
Or you could say the previous list, just the ones that are highlighted. So
Yeah.
either way you
On-
could do it.
Yes,
I'd like
That
it,
one's public.
no, I'd
Yeah.
like it to, well, this might not be public, but it's on our agenda system. I think it should match that.
that's fine. I apologize for all the documents. Again, this was an evolving process, and we tried to get all this cleared up yesterday. And obviously, I still
Just
didn't get it
for
right.
the public, it is the one that is the highlighted one.
The highlighted
Version
sections.
3.
Yeah.
Yeah, version 3 highlighted
that-
parcels, and then of course
Nobody wants to go
everything
Except for there's
listed.
no highlights on the additional 4.
The additional 4 that list did not change on the detail list, other than I gave you greater detail.
Right, but,
Yeah, well,
hey, we done.
well, why don't we, on the 4, let's at least put the serial numbers in there. I mean, I hate to do that, but we could reference
Well,
it by
I was
serial
just gonna
number.
use the polled parcels explanation page, and therefore in my motion, make it a public document.
Well, it can't be a public document with sensitive information on there.
Sensitive
And-
information.
Redacting the explanations.
Okay,
Okay,
that works.
I'll move that we approve the auditor's list with the document labeled 2017 polled parcels explanations, redacting all of the explanations for sensitive information.
Second.
all right, I got a motion and a second. As stated, all in favor, for number 5 on the consent agenda, as stated, all in favor say aye.
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 Aye. That passes 3-0. All right, we tabled number 10. Number 12.
Well, just a quick question on this one. I anticipate Richard will have the answer. Perhaps I missed it or was not seen. Just a basic documentation on the values of the trucks versus the work that we're doing. I'm assuming that we're getting a fair exchange there, but I just didn't see it on there. Is it?
No, it's a 93 GMC. There's nothing fair here.
Well, there actually is. The value of the truck's probably around $10,000 is what we've estimated on it. The work that we're looking at doing, it's about 680 feet of a 13-foot wide road that we're simply providing the manpower and equipment.
You think that truck's worth 10 grand? I'd like to sell you my next used car,
Well,
sir.
a new one is about 350,000.
Oh, okay.
So they're,
Maybe I'll buy that.
yeah, they're, But-
Since
and
this is
there's-
not your little.
I know it's a
GMC.
vacuum truck,
they're-
but I
they're a
was
little different
referring to the
animals, so-
amount of years in.
Yeah, and what it amounts to is we're looking at it that we can probably do it in about a day and a half. So we're looking probably, $3,000 to $4,000 in manpower and equipment that we would be out there. So we feel like we're getting a good deal on it.
A good deal on that. Again, I anticipated something similar to that, but I just hadn't seen that, and I wanted to confirm that that was indeed the case.
Already got the road base that you don't need fabric or anything. For,
It's an existing road actually inside the cemetery.
right.
That we'll be just rehabbing for them. It's actually a good place. We have 4 new guys on the roads crew, and this is a good place for them to go do some practice without live traffic. So,
It's a good idea.
Thank you. I don't have any additional questions.
Okay, a motion would be in order.
Move that we approve and authorize the commission chair to sign an agreement with Santa Quin City as stated in consent agenda item number 12.
Second.
I've got a motion and a second to approve and authorize as stated number 12 on the consent agenda. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. That passes 3-0.
Mr. Chair, just as way of information, those grants that are in there, they do total this year $294,000 even, based on the applications from the cities. So,
Okay, very good, thank you. All right, moving to those that were pulled off of regular agenda, number 2.
Yes, Commissioners. Ralph Clegg with the Health Department.
Perfect. Thanks, Ralph. Thanks for being here in this particular issue. My understanding is these were budgeted positions.
Yes,
In our regular budgeting process
the
that we
budget.
went through last year. I guess part of my questioning was, could you just please basically describe why we have the need for these additional nurses, how many students they'll serve, and the public health benefit that comes from their service?
Okay, good. These nurses will serve probably between 5,000 and 7,000 students. The recommended ratio.
Each or total?
Each, yeah, each of them. The recommended nurse-to-student ratio, national recommendation is 1 to 750. Our ratios, I think, the lowest school district is like 1 to 5,000 and something, and then it's up to 1 to 7,000 or something. And so we do the best we can with limited resources, of course. But the school nurses are responsible for developing health plans for the students that have those types of needs. For example, students with asthma have to have certain health plans that are approved, and working with their doctors to make sure that they have what they need in the school in case they have an incident or something. The same would apply with other students that may have autism or anything else that may need to be addressed in some special way in the school. They're also very involved in training school staff on, since they can't be at all the schools, on proper first aid procedures and how to handle certain situations that arise with our children in the schools. They're also involved with the health department responsibilities of restricting students from schools if there's outbreaks and most students haven't been immunized, for example, to make sure that both the students are protected and any students who can't be immunized for medical reasons are also protected in those types of cases. They work a lot with outbreaks of head lice. You know, they're very common sometimes in this particular population. And they're very, very diligent in doing that. I could bring up our school nurse supervisor probably to give you a better description than that, but that's a fairly basic one.
That helps a bunch. And again, this particular change helps us get closer,
Well, yeah,
although
yeah.
still significantly far off the recommended for.
We have Alpine School
good
District,
health.
for example, that, they add 3 to 4 to 5 schools a year, it seems like, with the growth that's taking place, particularly in the northern part of the
Nebo has a
county.
bond coming up for a whole bunch of new schools also.
Nebo also has a need, and Provo, why it doesn't grow so fast. What happened with Provo was years ago they reduced their school nurses to go with social workers to try to deal with some of their suicide rates that they were experiencing in the Provo School District, but have realized that affected them in other ways, and they're just trying to build it back up to where it probably should have been.
Okay. Perfect. Thank you. I don't have any additional questions.
Any other questions? All right, a recommendation.
I move that we authorize the staffing plan as stated in regular agenda item 2.
Second?
Got a motion and a second to authorize the staffing plan adjustment as stated number 2 on the regular agenda. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, that passes 3-0. Okay, with this one, Robert, if you're gonna come up, we have the opportunity now to look at this, and this recommendation. There's 2 companies on here that the recommendation, I always confuses me when I see the letter that says the selection committee. Shouldn't that be the recommending committee?
Yeah, I guess we could.
Okay, the recommending committee has evaluated these 2, and they have the McGrath Human Resource Group is picked as their number 1. I've went down through them. I only have one question. Both these companies are from out of state. Is that problematic at all?
Robert Baxter, County Purchasing Manager. That was a question I asked as well. It doesn't seem to be an issue. I mean, nobody submitted a proposal from in-state.
Yeah.
So I guess we could reject both of these if we thought that was a problem, but none of those on the recommendation committee seem to think it was an issue. I think most of this stuff can be done remotely. It does include 1 or 2, I think, trips here to meet with the county and with some of the people they'll be surveying as well. So I don't think it's really an issue.
Now, just the one that they recommended, if I remember right, because I remember the conversation they had about this on the committee. Didn't they say that this group also did already do the same kind of study in Utah, or is it the other group that did it?
No, they did.
This
Yeah,
one,
this one
okay.
did.
Yeah.
Okay, so they at least have some experience
I think
in
it was,
Utah.
I think it was Clearfield, or if I remember correctly. Yeah.
Yeah.
And most of they gave a number of references, and they were all over the country.
Okay.
So I guess it's pretty typical that it's not necessarily a local company that does it.
Okay, so you're confident with that as long as you feel confident that that's not a problem? That relieves my concern. I guess our options, unless there's more questions, our options are to either accept the recommendation or go to the second recommendation that or
Reject them all.
Get rid of them.
or start all over. Those are the options that we have. Either to reject any discussion.
The only question I have is which attorney is going to do the contract? Is it Robert Moore? Okay. I would ask that we kind of do the same thing we always do and see if we couldn't negotiate the price. I know it's only $2,000 more, but see if this is the recommendation we go, see if we can get a matching price like we've done before. So $2,000, they all add up.
And maybe in that contract as well. And I don't know if it can be written in that contract, and maybe it's assumed in that contract. But some companies come with a preconceived notion of, I'm gonna do the study and then we're just gonna give it to you. I think the county and the commission would like to be at those critical junctures in which there are decisions that have to be made, along with the HR department. And say, if we're going down this path, sometimes you can go this way or you can go that way. We'd like to be the ones that make that determination.
Yeah. Especially because the employees are all going to come and talk to us and find out where it's at and how it's going.
And as I recall, part of it,
Yeah, I mean, it's, but I just want to make sure in the contract, I mean, it is in the RFP because we,
part of the
we did.
proposal was the implementation of it as well. It's the study and the implementation. There's 2 parts to it.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that's completely understood.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's it for me.
Okay, no, it's, I think they were both very well qualified, but the recommending committee obviously felt that this one had a little bit of an upper hand, so.
Yeah. And
I'm
if I
very
remember right, the
comfortable with
nod.
the conversations I've had with them.
Yeah,
about
and the
their
nod went
qualifications.
because they had actual more experience in evaluating also law enforcement, if I
enforcement,
remember.
yep.
I think that's kind of what, I mean, they looked at them as 6s and then they said this one's 6.5 now, and because of that.
Yeah, they
so.
did have, and with half of our budget being law enforcement, it makes sense to go with someone that's had experience in that area. So, okay.
Then I will move that we approve the recommendation from the recommendation committee and select McGrath. I don't know the full name. I don't have that open right
Human
now.
Resource Group, yep.
Human Resource Group to do the compensation study as stated in regular agenda item 3.
Second?
Excuse me, let me amend my motion with the stipulated request from our attorney.
Second?
Yeah, I got a motion and a second to approve the recommendation as stated. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
That passes 3-0. Thank you. Okay. Number 4, you just need to explain this one a little bit to me. I mean,
Yeah, I'm gonna
we
invite
got a
our-
monitoring of the media. Like, if we can't are we monitoring the media ourselves? I'm with
Do we
alerts. I'm
really
just
need
not.
help with meltwater?
Do we?
I'm going to invite our PIO up to talk about this. And I think Carl was telling me that maybe we attached the wrong backup and we may have to continue it to get that for you. But,
Oh, okay. 'cause
At
I
least
have-
she can answer your questions about what meltwater would do in this case.
I had
for us.
questions on the agreements, so.
Okay. Sounds like this is going to be continued, but go ahead.
Evelyn Tolman Hill, Public Information Officer for the Health Department. What questions can I answer?
Well, the ones I had were, why are we doing this? Can't we monitor the media ourselves? Google alerts, Google News. What's the benefit of hiring an outside entity to do this for us?
Sure.
If we,
So we have actually been essentially monitoring our own media for the last several years. I've been on board for almost 2 years, and I've been doing that monitoring myself, essentially, during that time, and it's very, very time intensive. We've went through a number of different options to do that monitoring, and Google Alerts, Google News are probably the most helpful in that respect, but certainly not really the answer. Essentially, what it comes down to is very, very old school, going to each individual news outlet and doing the search yourself, which is not really what you want to do. And we have spent an extreme amount of time trying to essentially modify Google Alerts and Google News to do the work for us. This particular company, Meltwater, actually does some of the work for Google. They are extremely good at what they do. So we have spent an extreme amount of time and energy on our part trying to figure out, can we essentially do that monitoring ourselves? And we have been doing that more or less ourselves for the past 2 years since I've been on board, and I would say ever since 7 years before. So essentially we are not able to capture all of the coverage that we're getting, and it's not just the coverage, it's really when we have, especially during emergency situations, when we have messages that we need to get out to the community, we can put out a media release, we can put it out there, but unless we get a direct interview with a station, we don't know if that message is being put out to the community, because sometimes we put something out there and a media outlet will just take exactly what we provide to them and do a story directly from that. And unless they contact me for an interview, we don't know if that's happening. We have spent lots of time, energy, and resources trying to think outside the box, being creative. We have went to kind of one of our limping along fixes, if you will. We actually have several DVRs set up in my office at this time, which are all programmed individually to record each of the news stations. So if I know that, for instance, Fox has come down and they've done an interview, I can go and I can look at that, but there's not a good way for me to pull that coverage. So if I want to keep that, there's not a good way for me to then capture that. Sometimes, not all the time, sometimes it'll be available on their website, but again, it's only if I know about that. So one of the really important things about a media monitoring service is they do all of that for us. It's one of those things that they just notify me immediately, hey, you've got some coverage. For instance, I did an interview, and actually, I'll back it up. I got an email that said, you were interviewed. And I thought, actually, no, I wasn't. I haven't been interviewed in the last 48 hours. Why is my name being pinged as having done an interview? And that was a little bit concerning to me. So I want to know why our county and our agency is being tagged as having been interviewed. So come to find out, it was a BYU student who had done an interview with me about 2 months earlier. Lots of times when those students do interviews, they don't actually get published for a couple months. It was probably for a class. So as it turns out, that was okay. But you never know with media. It could have been something else. So it just depends on what the situation is, especially during times of, a pseudo emergency last summer during the algal bloom. We had such an extreme amount of media. It was almost, it was just borderline overwhelming. In situations like that, a tool like this is extremely helpful. It's invaluable to have something like this, to know where our coverage is coming from, to know one of the really important things is to know what the sentiment is in the public, to know what's being said. So when we're putting our social media messages out there, this tool will allow us to know what the sentiment is
I
out
stop
there.
you right there,
Sure.
just really quick. I don't disagree with you whatsoever. What offends me on this one, quite honestly, is we have a 2017 Business of the Year for Utah County that we awarded. They
Sure.
are the nation's leader, in fact, the world leader in social media tracking and stuff, and their cost is a half of this. So I'm wondering how we end up there and we don't end
Sure.
up 20 miles away to Lehigh.
So they only do social media. They don't do.
That's not entirely true. They actually have a new platform that I'm aware of.
When we did all of our research, they don't provide TV, radio, newspaper.
Even TV does social media. All of their stories that leak, they do track through social media.
Sure.
I know, because these
But-
guys are.
Sure. But the newspaper, so your traditional media is actually where that's kind of the more traditional side is actually where that's really where we're kind of needing to find out.
But the traditional side does not give you anything. The reality is what they do and where we are is even the Daily Herald, most of their readers are online, and therefore it goes viral, and the hashtags and everything that they do track is actually going to tell us where the buzz is and whether or not we need to get out ahead of it. And that's how our news agencies, 2, 4, 5, 13, are then all using that and coming saying, oh, this thing's blowing up, AKA the ice arena. All of a sudden you get
Sure.
3,000 hits in an hour, and now it's a news story. And so that is exactly what they do, and they can alert you so that you then know, and then you can set a DVR to watch yourself, or you could actually just pull it off the website.
Only
What
if
they'll
it
do.
becomes viral.
Well,
So-
no, because they still post all of theirs online,
So
the news agencies.
the news. So, but we do want to make sure that we're also getting all of that traditional media. So we want to make sure that we're not just using it just for those issues that could become hot button issues. So that we want, and we do want to know, okay, in general, where are we getting most of our coverage from? Is it from Fox 13? I can tell you on a daily basis typically where our coverage is coming from, because all those requests are going from me, are coming from, through me. But I want to know, it's going to help us be able to manage our brand better, be able to promote ourselves better, so that when we do have an emergency, so that we can really promote the correct messages to our public
Yeah,
better.
but traditional media is not the way to do that. That's my argument here is even newspapers, even TV. You can't watch a news story without them flashing up a hashtag to know.
Sure.
So my point is I think we're headed down a path of a little more outdated when.
And to that point, we actually are doing the social media platform that we're using to schedule all of our social media is free. So we have actually been using that platform for quite some time, and it's free.
Sure. But the reality is Nuvi, the company I'm talking about, obviously, will actually enter into an agreement for the entire county for about $200, $250 county-wide, which is about $2,500 annually.
And so what's important,
That's why I'm saying I'm trying to figure out how that doesn't help you alleviate time so that, okay, then you're only tracking down the 2 or 3, two stations that generally cover us. Channel 4 sometimes, Channel 5 rarely, unless Channel 2 and Channel 13 get it blown up. Then Channel 5 comes.
and what we want to know is not just those big things, but we want to know all of them.
Sure.
So when we did our research, we were not
Well-
seeing that they did all of those
I
meetings.
guess my problem is these things to me should go through an RFP when you're talking about stuff like this, because again, my big concern in the county is we have like web pages that are controlled by each department. Yet, so there's not a consistency of branding and messaging. You have your idea for branding, the sheriff's office has theirs, and the record, I mean, everybody has their own. Problem is the consumer is still the same consumer. It's still 600,000 people in Utah County that want the same messaging, yet we're all branding and no. We need to centralize our branding, and that's my point, is if we go through one and we go through an RFP process, because I promise you, this is not the same problem that others are not having. So that to me is why I'm not in favor of this one. I'm in favor of the concept, but I'm not in favor of this one at this point.
It sounds like we're gonna continue this anyway, so there can be some further discussion in the next 2 weeks, because we won't be meeting next week. But there can be some continued discussion, back and forth on what can be done. If we are going to continue it, a motion would be in order to do so.
Yeah, that's as most as I'm willing to do.
And that's, I think because there were some other issues there, and from my perspective, my questions were, why wasn't it an RFP on this, and what research led you to this company? And I would be happy to continue to have those questions, and if you want to answer them now, you can, but I also understand it sounds like there's some contractual issues that need to be resolved before we could actually take a formal action.
Sure.
One way or another.
Have more discussion.
I'll move that we continue this till May 30th.
I'll second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second, continue, item number 4, till May 30th. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. That passes 3-0 with the continuance. Okay. Number 5 is to set a date, time, and location for a public hearing to discuss amending and increasing the 2017 Utah County budget. And I don't know if there's any discussion that needs to be made on that, except for that we're just gonna set that public hearing date unless there's.
No, I'm happy to just make the motion, but do we want to let the public know this is for the HRIS system that we
Yes,
get?
very good.
So,
Yeah, we did purchase, we're in the process of purchasing the HRIS system, and so that's what this is designed for, is to open up the budget so that we can have the funds necessary to do that.
I'll move that we set a date, time, and location for a public hearing to discuss amending and increasing the 2017 Utah County budget in Utah County's general fund and various other budgetary funds for Tuesday, May 30th, 2017 at 9 a.m. in this room of 1400 in the County Administration Building.
Second?
I've got a motion and a second to set a date, time, and location for a public hearing to discuss and amending and increasing the budget. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
That passes 3-0. Okay, on to our closed meetings, to set our closed meetings. I know we need number 6. I have not received any for number 7. Pardon me? For what? Tax parcel for sale. Did you send me an email on that one? Okay, all right.
Well, the tax sale's in 3 days, so.
It's not one of those.
Oh, that's like,
Okay, so it looks like we're gonna need them all.
even 8.
Yep.
She's out of town. We could have got away with it.
Well, he doesn't have to be here for this one.
Oh, okay. I move that we approve and set a date, time, and location for a closed meeting for a strategy session to discuss the purchase, exchange, or lease of real property, water rights, or water shares for today's date at this location, following completion of regular agenda and work session item.
Second?
I've got a motion and a second to approve and set a date, time, location as stated number 6 on the regular agenda. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
That passes 3-0.
I move that we approve and set a date, time, and location for a closed meeting for a strategy session to discuss the sale of real property, water rights, or water shares previously publicly noticed for sale for today's date at this location, following completion of regular agenda and work session items.
Second?
I got a motion and a second to approve and set a date, time, and location as stated number 7 on the regular agenda. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Passes 3-0.
I move that we approve and set a date, time, and location for a closed meeting to discuss the character, professional competence, or physical or mental health of an individual or individuals for today's date at this location following the completion of regular agenda and work session items.
Second?
Got a motion and a second to approve and set a date, time, and location for a closed meeting as stated number 8 on the regular agenda. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
That passes 3-0.
Move that we approve and set a date, time, and location for a closed meeting for a strategy session to discuss pending or reasonably imminent litigation for today's date at this location following the completion of regular agenda and work session items.
Second?
Motion and a second to approve and set a date, time, and location as stated number 9 on the regular agenda. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
That passes 3-0. Okay, we have one work session item. Come on up. This is to talk about Canyon Road, specifically when it deals with Cedar Hills. We've been going back and forth a little bit in some of the negotiations on that and thoughts and what the process could look like. And so go ahead and start us off.
My name is Chandler Goodwin. I'm the city manager for Cedar Hills. It's good to be with you. Thank you for putting us on your agenda. We appreciate the cooperation there. We've met individually with each one of you to discuss our concerns and what we see the needs are on Canyon Road, SR 146. I hope you've had the chance to drive on this road at some point. I know, Commissioner Lee, I know you have. You live up in that area. It's a road that's been in disrepair, and I know that the county inherited it in a state of disrepair a couple of years ago when that exchange happened. And I'm aware that the county has entered an agreement with Pleasant Grove on the exchange for North County Boulevard and for Pleasant Grove to ultimately take over their portion of Canyon Road, which is south of the Murdoch Canal. We feel like we're in a different position than Pleasant Grove. Pleasant Grove exchanged portions of North County Boulevard with the county, and they had the infrastructure, they had the trucks, they have the manpower, they have the budget, and their revenues are projected to increase over the years as they have room to grow. So they have the ability, we feel, to absorb taking on a road such as Canyon Road. Cedar Hills is in a little bit different situation. We're nearing build out. We don't have projected revenue increases similar to what Pleasant Grove has. We don't have trucks or the manpower to be able to service this road in the wintertime. So I know we've worked out an agreement with Pleasant Grove to do the snowplow along there, but there are major concerns about Cedar Hills taking over the ownership of Canyon Road at some point in the near future. Just the sheer immensity of the road in scale of the size of Cedar Hills would ultimately sink our road budget year over year. We had our contract engineering firm, Bowen & Collins, come out and do a high-level study up for us on what it would cost us to maintain the road over the course of 30 years, and they estimated, without adjusting for inflation year over year, with assuming some surface treatments every 5 years with some treatments every other year, and then a mill overlay every 5 years, they're looking at about $2.8 million over the course of the life of the year, over the course of 30 years, which would be our entirety of our road budget, which would mean that we're neglecting our stewardship on the remainder of our city roads. So what the city is proposing, and we've proposed this to you before, is that the road is in a state of disrepair. There's potholes, there's fracturing. It's in a bad situation, and I know that there's plans to correct some of that. However, we feel that the plans don't address the ultimate cause of these fractures, these potholes, in that there's a drainage problem along the road that floods homes. It has constant pooling along sections of the road. There's a section of the road that we're most concerned about, which is north of Murdoch Canal and south of Cedar Hills Drive. Along that corridor, it's actually about half Pleasant Grove and half Cedar Hills residents. The border there is a little bit skewampus, for lack of a better term, but it's about half and half. Pleasant Grove's jurisdiction only will go up to Murdoch Canal, so the major problems that we're seeing aren't being alleviated when they take over the road. So what we're proposing is that the county installs some sort of a storm drain system, curb gutter along that portion of the road to help channel that water that comes down the mountain into some sort of retention basin that's along there. And we're hoping that that will alleviate some of the subsurface cracking, some of the deterioration that we see on the road when we have the freeze and thaw cycles. and that we've proposed that the county install those improvements, and that when they're done, that the city take them over, that the city take ownership of them, or the city takes maintenance of them. We've talked about this with each one of the commissioners at some point, and I'd be happy to address any questions that you may have at this time, or what we can do to further this. I know that this is into the design phase. I know that they're moving along, and in August they're hoping to have a final design, so that's why we feel like time is of the essence here.
I wonder just for, this is a work session, so I wonder if Richard, if we can have you come up as well, and just from your perspective, give us some of your insights onto the road, more, maybe specifically to, the JUB engineering, that was done, what was kind of agreed to in the past as well.
The concept plan.
The concept plan, the money, that was not necessarily the money, but the concept plan and what that meant and what's different and what the county would more than likely feel comfortable with and not feel comfortable with.
Sure. Richard Nelson, Public Works Director. The JUB plan, that was the concept plan that was presented to MAG 3 or 4 years ago when the funding was approved, it contemplated having curb and gutter installed on the downhill side of the road, so the west side of Canyon Road. For the drainage issues that they're describing, as far as if they're causing problems, would be on the east side of the road, because that would be where you'd get any of that subsurface drainage going through. There was not curb and gutter contemplated in that JUB concept plan on the east side of the road. There were some spot improvements, and there would still be some areas where we have some ponding issues that we would do some improvements. It would be more or less like a drainage sump that's typical in areas where you have
Which the county does everywhere when we have county roads or these issues.
We typically don't have curb and gutter at all.
Well,
so
no, I
we
mean,
do
as far as
drainage
taking
swell.
care of the drainage issues, because we don't
Correct.
want our roads.
If they will work, they have to be in the right kind of soil, which
Right.
typically you have to be in more of a gravelly soil to have that be an effective way to handle the stormwater. As far as working on the west side of the road and capturing that stormwater and installing curb and gutter there, the concern that I have with it is that a lot of the driveways on the west side of the road basically start at the white line, the edge of the traveled lane, and go down to the homes and the garages. By widening out to put in the curb and gutter, even 3 or 4 feet, and then the height of the back of the gutter, so you effectively capture the water, you've now increased the height on that driveway in some cases by a couple of feet, and then we wind up rebuilding the driveway all the way down to the home in order to catch grade. I see that opening up the
But
county.
we won't.
Well, I'm just saying that if you look at that JUB concept plan, then we wind up rebuilding those driveways. I now see that opening up us as, I don't know that it would increase our liability, but it would definitely increase the point that the homeowners can come back and say, well, you county are the ones that changed my driveway, and now I'm still getting flooded, so therefore you're the ones that's causing it, even though it's not changing from where it is now. The majority of the water that's getting down to those homes, in my opinion, is coming from those driveways, because it's a lot more of the asphalt surface than what the section of road would be in front of their home. That's why we have opted to not include that as part of the project. Try to hit some of these spot improvements that we need to, but not do a full-on curb gutter storm drain project along that portion of the road.
Can you also talk about the sensitive part for the county in the sense of that if it stays a county road, or if it's ever improved upon in the future, or if the city requests, that something else be done with the road, that it would transfer? Sure.
From the discussions that happened several years ago, as North County Boulevard was being contemplated, and I was not involved in these meetings. This predates my time at the county, so I will tell you what I've been told. That my understanding was then that the commission at the time and the county engineer at the time had talked with UDOT, had talked with the cities, and said, if we do this and we make this transfer, this road, Canyon Road, would become a city road. It would actually be transferred to the county and then ultimately to the cities. But it was also talked about that if it stayed in the county ownership, it would be maintained as a county road.
Which it was presented at the MAG tip process as a city-owned road.
Correct. At the MAG process, it was presented by the cities of Pleasant Grove and Cedar Hills for the funding.
Right.
It was not presented as a county project. There was money that came to the county as part of the jurisdictional transfer. It's about $3.3 million, if I have the number straight in my head. that would go specifically for pavement maintenance on that road. So that money has been included with the MAG money that was done, as well as some money that was transferred from North County Boulevard, gives us about $9.3 million total. The contemplation at the time was that if the county were to own and maintain this road, that we would treat it very much like we would a county road. And I'll use Woodland Hills Drive over in the south end as an example. That's a similar type road that moves a lot of traffic. In that case, in Woodland Hills, it's actually, there's very few driveways that directly enter onto the road. Canyon Road, it does have a lot of driveways that have been built and direct access to the homes. A lot of the newer areas in Cedar Hills don't have direct driveway access onto it, very much the same as what Woodland Hills Drive has. So we would look at it, maintaining it very similar to that. In those cases, we don't have curb and gutter. We do it with drainage swells along the way. We typically have anywhere from 24 to 30 feet of asphalt, two 12-foot travel lanes, and in some cases a 3-foot paved shoulder on either side of the road. That's typically what we look at for the collector type roads in the county. And that's what we had anticipated maintaining that way. The agreement with Pleasant Grove, where it does transfer that, it does contemplate that happening out at the 30-year time frame. We'd had similar discussions with Cedar Hills on that along through the last, probably year and a half or so.
2.5.
2.5. Oh boy, time flies. So, but that was an issue, and it's always been that issue for Cedar Hills is taking ownership of that. We have looked at are there other options of how do we deal with continued growth? There's not a ton of growth that'll still happen in Cedar Hills. There would likely be some, and whether that growth would trigger any type of a transfer to the city
Would
or
be for
other
me.
improvements. So that's the discussion that we've had. If there's other questions, I'd be happy to try to answer it from my side. So.
Okay.
Are you familiar through the MAG process, let's just say the last 10 years of funding, of any other projects where the cities have come in and demanded of the county to build above standards of county road without transfer of title?
This is the only one that we have dealt with where we've had what is now a county road with money funded from a project that was requested by the cities. There have been others on UDOT roads that the cities request the funds, and this was a UDOT road at the time the cities requested the funding, so that's clear. There have been other projects where the cities have requested funding for a project along a UDOT road, and it stays as UDOT ownership. And typically that's either been an intersection improvement, shoulder improvements, maybe a trail that's parallel to the road, something along that lines. But there has been others of UDOT roads with the cities, various cities throughout the county.
So
doing
Elk
that,
Ridge
so.
Drive, for example,
Yes.
is a project that the county submitted on a county road that in essence would be the equivalent if they had the population.
I would say yes. Yeah.
Okay. Has Elk Ridge Drive, have they come down and said, put curb and gutter, expand this? How involved in this process have they been? Other than, please get us a traffic light on the UDOT road?
Salem City or Elk Ridge?
Elk Ridge.
And
I'm
actually-
talking literally the Elk Ridge Drive from, not the new road, the other one that you got funded for 21, 22.
And that part of the road is actually not in Elk Ridge. It's actually 99% in the unincorporated county. There is a small portion that is in Salem City. But that road has stayed very much the same, even with our planned expansion of that road and the widening of that road. It would stay with no curb and gutter. It would have the drainage swells. It would widen out to where we actually have some shoulders and some turn pockets and things like that.
But not above the 30 feet that we're talking normally.
Well, the only place it would is at some of the intersections we
Right.
would include a center turn lane.
If we do the
So,
roundabout or whatever the design calls for.
Yep.
Right, okay.
Okay. Other thoughts or questions?
Well, I'm definitely one who, this project's going forward.
Understand.
I think Cedar Hills has been the one. I have a problem with the joint project when Pleasant Grove's been a good partner, and I appreciate what you're saying budget-wise, but I'm here to tell you the county's budget is much different than your own.
I know, I understand that as well.
And so for me, it's not, I mean, again, I trust our engineers when they tell me that we're gonna improve this to be a safe traveling road that meets county standards. If our road standards weren't up to safety, we'd be being sued all the time. So I think, I think it's unfair, and I would never go to any city and say, this road's garbage, and you need to build it up to this, and because the county shouldn't have jurisdiction over city property. That's how I view this case. Cedar Hills, for me, I get why you want it, but if the county were ever to give you the road that you're desiring, the only way you're gonna get my vote is that you will take 100% ownership if and when you ever try and add access at all and alter it whatsoever. So in other words, when you say you're built out, yeah, you're built out. And I don't know that those landowners up there would agree to that, the ones that have all that coming in, because I believe that as development happens, that's when you force them to do the improvements. You have them do the curb and gutter and everything. And if you drive along 400 North, which is also 1600 South in Mapleton / Spanish Fork, you'll see what I believe is the model how Utah County should do it. You got a connecting road between two highways. It's a 2-lane road, but every time development keeps adding, now it's widened out to the 54 feet or whatever, 48 feet, or who knows exactly what the standards are, but they put in the curb and gutter, and there are pieces of it here and there, and as development continues to happen, that's how the improvement happens. It shouldn't be everybody else's job to pay for that. I think that that's the developer, and I don't think the county should be in the business of putting that in when it's not our standards and for a developer.
No, I understand that. So if you drive along Canyon Road, the only portion I'm talking about is from Murdoch Canal to Cedar Hills Drive. From that portion, it is a 2-lane highway. It is narrow. It's an older part of town. Much of that land was unincorporated county land back in the mid-70s. If you go north of Canyon Road, if you go north of Cedar Hills Drive, the road expands. There's a turning lane,
Right.
and there's curb gutter, there's sidewalks. Because you're right. As development has happened over the years, this is development in the last 15, 20 years, the city has required them to put in storm drain, curb gutter improvements along there. And we've seen that portion of the road is in much better shape than the portion south. So I agree. As development happens along Canyon Road, we've required developers to put in storm drain and curb gutter improvements. But the portion that I'm talking about is not going to be improved. These are old homes. This is former county land. This is stuff that's been there for decades. There's not going to be an improvement. Even addressing any sort of drainage swell, you just some sumps along the side that would collect that rainwater and try to pull it away from driveways as best we can. There's one spot that I know of that we affectionately refer to as the duck pond on 9220, and we spoke with you a couple weeks ago about that. This 9220, there's always a pond. In the middle of the summer on the hottest day, there's always water collecting there. And it's coming off the side from city roads onto Canyon Road. Now there is a sump on the side of the road there that's supposed to collect some of that storm water. But it's on an angle, and it's clogged, and it just doesn't ever work. It hasn't ever worked. It was designed in the mid-70s when that was a county land, and it's just never worked. City right now, we're working in the design plans. We're trying to get a couple add-ons to help address that drainage. So we're trying to be good stewards of our property and say, okay, well, how can we correct the drainage that's going onto Canyon Road? But we do need to address the drainage that is on Canyon Road itself, not the stuff that's going onto Canyon Road, but just
Right. And I believe our project will address that. Maybe not to what you guys want, but we will address it because we're not in the business of doing a road that we know is going to allow water and alligator, as most people refer to it, or whatever, because again, we don't want to expend our funds when we don't need to. And, because it's funny when I hear you talk about a mill overlay every 5 years, well, it's a little excessive actually, because proper road maintenance, you don't ever need, if you do it the right way, it's an 8 to 10 year, if you use the right mix, and maybe it's a slurry seal to maybe take that from 8 years to 10 years or 10 years to 12 years, even with the traffic.
All right, I'm sorry, the mill overlay was every 10 years. It was.
I thought I heard you say 5
I
years.
did. Let me correct myself. It was a slurry seal every 5 years and then a mill overlay every other 5 years. So you would alternate that.
Okay.
So let me
That's
correct
very
myself.
reasonable. That makes more sense to me. So, and that's why I say, but at the same time, the county standard, we're still going to do that. And as traffic increases, what I've noticed from the 70s till now, our county standards have increased. We've gone from mostly dirt roads to barely above dirt roads in some opinion. So, I think there's a chance for, us to do the right thing, but I just don't think it's going to be to the standards that you guys have, but I believe we will address those issues that you're talking about.
Maybe if I could, when I first came into office, it was interesting. This road came up, and I was told this is the road that no one wants to own, and it's still true today. And as we went down through the process trying to find, and as I was learning more about what this road was all about, and I live in Pleasant Grove, so I see it, drive on it. I know what it's like. Replace my shocks quite often. Anyway, so I see the concern. I see the need there. And as we went through the process trying to find, what the balance is and what we can do, it's really confusing to a certain degree, because the North County Boulevard was that was the road that the county said, we're going to take up all the ownership all along, get all the cities in place. So American Fork and Highland and others, they gave up roads. And then the county said, so that we can all be on the same page, the county will be the one who is taking on an asset that is deteriorating, which is ultimately, 100 East.
Yeah.
And so the county had no real dog in this fight, except for just the betterment of the county overall. We didn't have any roads that we were giving up. All the cities were giving up roads, except for Cedar Hills. Cedar Hills didn't give up any roads on that project, which I recognize, and which is an important point for me as I look down through, what we're doing and what we can do and what we should do. And in doing that, I also recognize that there's some little bit of finger pointing on who was going to take, was the city actually going to do this? Were they going to take the roads over eventually? Who applied for the money? The cities applied for the money to get there. Now we got this pot of money, and no one wants that pot of money to actually just go away and be thrown back into the mix, because the road situation, we want to use it. The county was willing to kind of pull back on that and say, okay, well, we're not going to use it all, because the study did say this is what, on a concept basis, could be done. And if the county is going to keep the ownership in it, then we'll just do what county does on it, and we'll finish it out on a county basis. That wasn't acceptable to the cities, so we had this conversation back and forth, and we all know what happened there. Pleasant Grove accepted it. Cedar Hills rejected it and said, we can't do this. It's a different situation. And I've received a lot of pushback both ways. I live in Pleasant Grove, and part of the conversation is, and rightfully so, if we go down a road different than what Pleasant Grove has agreed to, then why? Why are we treating it different? Why are we giving what could seem to appear like a better deal to Cedar Hills? And that's where I think that it's important to note, one, Cedar Hills didn't give up any roads, and two, there's got to be in our agreement that if there's anything done on this road in the future, if the city wants to do anything else, that they'll take over ownership, because a county road will be a county road. Now, the money's in the way of how it's allocated or spent. I think Richard could work that out, and the city could work that out, and you're not going to get everything. The last letter I saw, there was some proposals on speed limits. That's not going to happen. That's not going to be written into any contract that we have there, just because we're not going to have the city council and the commission determining what a speed limit is.
They're engineered for speed, and that's how
So
they're
we're
determined.
going to stay away from that. But from my perspective, I would like to consider looking at what is feasible with the road in the way of actually doing and using the money that's appropriate according to what the concept was on there, with a real strong language in there that if it ever changes, if the city ever wants to do anything different, even right down to a light, that they automatically take the transfer of ownership. And I think that's important enough to us that if we don't have that, I don't think it's a go anywhere with that.
Well, let me ask you this. When you say do anything with the road, I've heard two different items that would be considered do anything with the road. I understand adding a semaphore at an intersection would be changing the traffic flow patterns on the road, but adding another access where there's been planned access, is that changing the road?
Like, you mean another lane?
Another lane.
Another
Just,
access?
for example, where Cedar Hills Drive connects to Canyon Road, it's currently Cedar Hills Drive comes to Canyon Road, and you have to go either right or left. In the plans, there's a development that will go in that will take Cedar Hills Drive east through across Canyon Road.
I think through the process, it would have to be, if Cedar Hills wants something different done with the road, if it changes the design of the road or anything has to be done differently, then yes, it would be Cedar Hills would take over the ownership of the road.
I understand that. And
If you're just saying access in the sense that the road's coming up to it and then,
well, Commissioner Graves mentioned access. That's why I brought it up. It was, you've brought up a
driveway access?
No, like a full-on
Like
road.
No, full-on development.
Well, full-on development, you're gonna have to have some sort of engineering that goes on with that to have that happen. Yes, that would be changing the road itself.
Okay, and then I'm from Pleasant Grove as well. I live in Pleasant Grove. And I've heard the concerns that Pleasant Grove has about Cedar Hills working out a negotiation with the county versus Pleasant Grove's negotiation with the county. The portion that we're talking about is half of it is owned by Pleasant Grove. So their jurisdiction that they've taken over from the county ends at Murdoch Canal, but they still own half the road from Murdoch Canal to Cedar Hills Drive. So this is a concern for our city, that you've worked out an agreement with Pleasant Grove, but they haven't taken ownership of all of their road.
So that statement kind of offends me, actually, because no agreement was ever reached with Pleasant Grove City, and where Cedar Hills was not invited, and the agreement was actually done at the same time. I know, but we were all there in all the meetings for the last 2.5 years. This started before Commissioner Lee and I were ever in office. Mayor Gigi pulled us in and said, this is the first and most important issue, literally before we were even sworn in. It was the first issue. And the reality is Cedar Hills, Pleasant Grove, and the county has sat down every time and talked about, everybody has seen the agreement. So for Cedar Hills to think that they should get a different agreement than Pleasant Grove, to me, is offensive, and it's not going to happen. I shouldn't say, this vote's never going to happen, because, again, we should be fair and equitable to everybody. Now, again, addressing the safety concerns, if you guys see a safety concern that's not in the project, that's different. But as far as treating each other different, it's not for me. It is going to be the same. I voted, and quite honestly, when Cedar Hills decided to reject it, that's why we amended it. We actually continued it in this meeting. 2 weeks later, we had to amend it and pull out the two cities. And then we did an agreement with Pleasant Grove, and at that point, I was determined to just move forward and overlay the Cedar Hills Road, making it as safe as possible, knowing we were going to fix some of the damage.
So let me clarify your concern. So let's, because I know what you're talking about. There's one side that is still Pleasant Grove, Grove residents.
As you drive through that
Yep.
portion, it switches.
Right,
The
I get
border is
that.
very irregular.
So is your concern that if something happens on the Pleasant Grove side where they're, because it's Pleasant Grove's the one that has the jurisdiction over that area, and there's something that changes different there that comes onto the road, that Pleasant Grove could force Cedar Hills to then own the road?
No, that's not really a concern, because I don't see anything happening there that would trigger that type of development. It's pretty built out along there. My concern is that I hear Pleasant Grove's complaints, and I understand them. I really do, because I can see where their perspective is. What I don't understand, though, is that their residents are the direct beneficiaries of our proposal, because they have half of the residents along Canyon Road along this portion. So I understand that it's a different agreement, but they are the direct beneficiaries of our agreement.
I would argue that if Pleasant Grove thought that, they'd have negotiated it, because we had such lengthy discussions with them.
Well, Pleasant Grove's portion, I would say, probably has 95% already has curb gutter along
Yeah,
it.
but as you know, in the city, most residents, as long as it's a nice looking road and overlaid, they don't know nor care. I mean, the reality is they don't want the potholes. They would just want it to look shiny and new and, or not shiny, but black and painted. That's how most people
They
view
want a
roads.
smooth ride.
Right. That's going to happen in this process.
But what's going to happen after 5 to 10 years, though, along the north of Murdoch Canal?
We will maintain it to county standards, just like we always do, whether it's a chip seal, whether chip seal and fog coat, whether it's a slurry, whether it's an overlay, because, it's a county hazard. That's what we do with our roads.
I think for me, the question would be, are you happy with the county road there?
Well, it's been a state road for a long time.
I know it
and
was, but my question is
I
are you
we
guys
can live
happy
with
with the county
We can live
road
with
there?
it being a county road. We can live with it being a county road simply because of the fact that we understand limitations of what we can do.
And so, if you're happy with it being a county road at county standards, then as we go through the project, it's gonna be a county road with county standards. And if you're happy with that, that's what it's gonna be. If you would like some type of enhancement, the county policy is that at some point in time, the city takes ownership. And I think that's a pretty easy decision.
Understood?
And that's like, it's to your residents, if your residents push back and say, hey, no, we really want these enhancements, we'll find out it's a 30-year time frame. We'll figure out a way in the next 30 years to build into our budget to maintain and take care of that, then do that. But if you're like, now the enhancements aren't really that big of a deal to us, as long as it's smooth to ride on and it's like the other 500-600 miles of county road we drive on, then that's what it'll be. I guess that's kind of my
That's the
feeling.
whole sticking point, I think, right there is one, because if you want just a county road, that's gonna happen.
Yeah. It's
If
gonna
you
get
want
fixed.
more
It's
than,
gonna get fixed in terms of brought up to a nice smooth ride.
Our goal
and-
is to eliminate the pond.
most,
and maintain it, yes.
maintain it.
Yeah, and so that's gonna happen.
Most residents
It's
don't
just
know
gonna
the
be
difference
at
in
a
city road
county
and county road.
standard.
Yeah, yeah.
And if you want something beyond a county standard, I think that's a reasonable ask. And then all we're trying to say is our policy is, then at some point you need to take ownership.
You wanna
And
change it.
we'll work with you. We'll give you 30 years to build it into your budget, if that's what you want.
Yeah, and I understand that. Thank you. Are there any other questions?
I don't.
So maybe what we'll do is, we'll work with Richard and kind of give a proposal, and you can take it back to the city council and see, if they agree with, something more than, with some of the enhancements that was on the concept plan, that was there, that seems reasonable for us with, obviously, there's a certain amount of money that can be used. We can't go over that. So there are some limitations that are there. And if you can work on that, and then we can get something back, and we'll see if the city council
Well-
goes for it. If they don't, then it will just be a county road
And
all the way
without
through.
increase, just like we did in Pleasant Grove, without increase to your maintenance budget. Because all additional maintenance budget should be picked up by Cedar Hills at their request. That's what we did with Pleasant Grove City, and that would only be fair.
If there are additions.
Right, and
like
I know
that,
you guys said you were
we-
okay with that.
We will happily take them on. If it's a storm drain system that needs to be cleaned out annually, we'll do that, if it addresses some of these concerns.
We can work down through them and look at the storm drain issues. Richard's got a list of all those, and what, on the concept plan, there was some curb and gutter that was there, some storm drain issues, whatever the case, and then we'll propose that back and see if we can come to an agreement.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, that is the end. Is there,
Temporary end.
is there public comment? Now's the time for public comment. If there is, you can come up and state your name. Seeing none, we'll
see
move,
Katie back
we'll
at our
move into
meetings.
we'll move into our closed meeting sessions. Just not quite the same, huh, Katie, online.
It's Aislinn, not Islin. Unless you want to make her mad like